Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Beasts of the Mesozoic release. Actually, no, we'll scratch that. This is a Cyberzoic release, as we have the 1/12 scale Smilodon. And you might be thinking, did I not just review a Smilodon from Creative Beast Studio? Yes, I did. I did review the black version, the much darker version. Well, this is now the Cyberzoic version, which features a more almost traditional sort of color scheme, I would say, for a Smilodon, and I would think maybe is the better of the two as far as the colors go. Initially, I was kind of leaning more toward the other one after actually having seen it in person, but now just looking at this one through the little window area here, I think my opinion is probably going to change. But you can see, again, you've got a nice shot here of the Smilodon, the really nice artwork on the front of the box, of course, the Cyberzoic logo up there on the top, and then the information on the Smilodon down at the bottom. You have your standard info basically here on the underside, showing off everybody that worked on it and everything. And then if you turn it to the side, first of all, you do have another shot of the Smilodon. Really nice looking artwork, very proud looking Smilodon over there. And then you can see a really cool image on the other side, and then some images and information here on the back of the packaging for our Smilodon. So let's go ahead, pop this box open and check it out. So contained within the packaging, of course, are your assembly instructions. Again, I always say this in every Beasts of the Mesozoic review, which means I've said it a mountain of times. It's always very important to read this. Pay attention to it if you are new to these figures, because it will help you in the long run to make sure your figure, can be assembled and disassembled correctly without damaging it. So very much so an important read if you are new to these figures. You also have the card, which we can see shows off the same incredible artwork that we saw on the front of the packaging. That is absolutely gorgeous and shows off one of the nicest images of a Smilodon I think I've ever seen. And then you of course have a little bit of photography here on the back with some more information. Overall, it is a really nicely designed card. Like, you can't look at that and not just appreciate how well designed it is. The colors, the overall appearance to it, the art, everything looks fantastic on these cards. I absolutely love that those are included. Also, another thing that I actually didn't mention in any of the previous Cyberzoic reviews, here is what you see for the inside of the packaging. But what's cool is if you actually turn it around, you do have a really nice backdrop that you can display the Smilodon in front of. So that's a really cool way to display the figures. I love that, David Silva creates these sort of extra backdrops where you can basically see it's like folded over and almost hidden within the packaging, just so that you have a really nice display for your Cyberzoic figure. And then of course when it comes to the figure itself, first of all, we have the same sort of like extra stuff included, where you have the alternate paws, which we can see. You can get a nice shot here of them from the front. We have already gone over these, of course, with the initial Smilodon review, but I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a better visual of what these ones look like. They're just basically slightly different looking compared to the paws that we have on the Smilodon currently. And then you also have this little extra area of basically like fur moving along the back of the Smilodon, which helps to give it a little bit more of like a calm look compared to what we have on the figure itself, because here is our Smilodon, and this section specifically is, again, what I was speaking of, where you can kind of see how like the fur is sticking up on the figure, and you can use the other one to kind of replace that and give you a much more calm look moving down along the back of the neck. But that Smilodon is absolutely gorgeous. It is honestly even better in person than I was expecting it to be, and undoubtedly has to be one of the nicest Smilodon figures that I have personally ever seen. Let me go ahead and readjust these legs so I can get this standing. Maybe the most awkward stance ever. It looks like it was just running and decided to slam its brakes on, basically, and is now sliding in almost a cartoon-like fashion, which is kind of silly. But we do also have the alternate head, which you can see again has the more wide open, much more visually impressive appearance to the Smilodon. It looks super cool. But what we're of course going to do is just go ahead and take a closer look at the figure first, and then, we'll swap the head out and take a look at it with the other head on. Now, sculpt-wise, I don't think anything is different on this one compared to the first release. I think everything sculpt-wise should be the same. It's just basically a different color variant, and, looking at it, I can definitely say it's a better looking color variant in my opinion. So here in the face, you can see we've got quite a few different variations of browns. We've got some really nice kind of darker browns for the primary body color, and then you have some lighter tones, kind of like a khaki or a tan, that is dry brushed over quite a few different areas, helping to highlight the fur detail and also lighten certain areas. You could see a little bit of a lighter tone, even lighter than what we see on the snout there around the eye. The eye is painted quite nicely with a black and then a yellow and then a black pupil, and it does have a beautiful gloss coat to it, which you can see again as the light hits it, shining quite realistically. You can also see the lighter tone nicely applied to the lower jaw right here. We've got, of course, those saber teeth hanging out of the mouth, and they look really good as well. As I turn it right there, you can really see the very realistic shine that it has to it, giving it, again, a quite realistic look as a whole. Obviously, we can see we do have an articulated jaw, just like we had the first time around, and you can get a nice look at the inside of the mouth if my camera focuses correctly. There you go. You can see the tongue and everything in there, obviously painted with a pink and then given a nice wash, but there's also a different tone of color. As you get closer down to the teeth on the lower jaw, you can see almost like an orangish sort of a tone in there, and then you can see how the detail looks. There's also a very nice gloss coat in there, giving it that strong saliva-like look. We can even see some brownish tones added to the tops there of the saber teeth of our Smilodon, just to give it a little bit more variation of color. And then, of course, the teeth here on the lower jaw. And the jaw does work quite nicely, so you can get a nice closed mouth, or, of course, that wide open mouth, although you do have the alternate head to give you a better visual of the wide open mouth. And when you take a look at it right here from the front, one thing I will say is the eyes look like they're pretty decent as far as like matching up and looking forward, so that's definitely a plus, at least for this head. We can also see a pinkish tone for the nose of our Smilodon, a darker tone, of course, included within the nostrils, and then we also have a nice satin shine to that area as well. The paintwork is really nice here on the face. We do also have a different lighter variation of a brown, almost like an orangish brown, moving over the top of the snout from the nose up, and then it starts to kind of taper away as you move further up into the head. And then you just basically have that darker, fairly vibrant brown that we have for the primary body color, almost bordering on like a reddish brown. But as you move up, you do see a little bit more variation of color with some more kind of like orangish browns over the top of the head and over the ears. We can see a little bit of like a lighter dry brushing inside the ears, as well as more of that dry brushing coming down here, really highlighting all of the incredible fur detail on this figure. And we see that continue as we move down into the neck and throat, but of course up here on the top, you can see a little variation of brown, as there is a, like an even darker brown that shows up here. And you can see it actually within the fur. When you get nice and close, you can see that darker brown showing up. I don't know if it was, I'd say probably was applied with a wash to really crawl in and out of all of the fur up there. And then, of course, we do have this nice little area of fur up here on the top that is also, again, highlighted with that lighter tone, similar to what we see on the lower side of our Smilodon, and that does move down into the back, but then, of course, starts to taper away. This area looks really nice because, again, you've got two different variations of browns, basically, kind of like combined into one area. And it, first of all, really highlights the fur detail beautifully, but just looks really nice. Like, I really like the tones of brown and everything that they've used right there. It just looks super realistic and very appealing, and continues to show off how vibrant the actual fine detail is on the figure. As you move down into the front leg, we can see, again, quite a bit of variation of color with different shades of browns. You can even see orangish browns showing up within the muscle definition right there. You've got more of the lighter tone moving down along the front of the leg and on the insides of the leg, which you can see right there. As you lead down a little bit further, you do get a lighter shade of brown, and you also start to pick up some dark brown patterning, and then there's also a dry brushing over top of that, and you can really see how impressive of a job they've done when it comes to highlighting all of the fur. Same deal with a lighter tone moving along the elbow fur right there. And then you move down into the foot sculpt here, and you can see the toes again are all painted with the same lighter brown that we have in the upper part of the leg. There's also a random area of like that dark brown that for some reason has a strong gloss coat right there. You can see it over here, but it doesn't really have that gloss coat on that side. For some reason, this side does, and I don't know why. But you can see the nails are also painted with a white, and they look pretty good. As we move up, there is more of that lighter brown. Actually, that's more of like the orangish brown here in the lower part of the stomach, and you have even more lighter tones as you move down into the underbelly of our Smilodon. And they've done a great job of like dry brushing that on there, especially as you move back here. Again, continuing to really help highlight all of the fur. But you have that darker brown kind of striping in as that basically tapers away and breaks up into a striping effect that moves along the back of the Smilodon. This is the only area that I would say looks more like paint on the figure rather than body color. Like you can really see it's very obvious paintwork moving along, and there's not much when it comes to like dry brushing or anything in this spot to highlight the fur. I feel like it's not quite as nice as what we see elsewhere on the figure, but it still looks okay. This area here as well, you can kind of see an obvious area where the transitioning between the dry brushing ends there into the orangish browns, and it's obviously paint. So it's not quite as smooth as some paint application on the Beasts of the Mesozoic and Cyberzoic figures, but it looks okay. It doesn't look bad. It's just, you know, you can really tell it's not straight up body color, but decent enough. Again, the patterning is fairly smooth, and you can see that as you move down like into the thigh, you can see more of that patterning and stuff. You also have a yellowish brown moving along the back of the leg. Even though for the most part we basically just have a whole bunch of different shades of browns, there is no shortage of variation of color when it comes to the different shades of browns on this figure. They, as usual, always add a lot of paintwork and coloration to their figures. And even in the orangish brown here, you can see, focus camera, you can see a little variation of color. Looks like maybe they've applied a wash to that area. But as you move down, you have that orangish sort of, actually a little bit of a more darker variation of an orangish brown show back up in the shin area, more of the dark brown patterning, and then we lighten up as we lead down into the foot sculpt of the Smilodon. Nice dry brushing and everything down here, and again the nails painted with a white, and then you lead out into the tail, and you do have an orangish brown tail with a light dry brushing on the underside as well, and that pretty much will do it as far as the coloration goes for the figure. Of course, the articulation is all the same as we had seen the first time around. You do have the ability to kind of turn the head a little bit, which you can see there, again on like a swivel to give you a little head tilt. It also moves up and down and left and right a little bit, so you do have just, you know, that little extra area of articulation, but it's not super impressive in that area. You do also have some neck articulation right here, which can go up and down, but for some reason is like super stiff right now. There you can get a little bit of a, you know, feel for how that neck articulation works. It's not super impressive in that area either, but what is good is it does have a nice left and right turn to it, so you can get some really nice head turns for the Smilodon, which is a huge plus when it comes to the overall display. And you can get the head looking down and then the head looking up and stuff, so it does work pretty nicely. As you move back, you do of course also have the articulation in the front leg, which is pretty smooth forward and back. It does have a little wiggle room out, but not a whole lot. You also have the elbow forward and back, as well as this area of the wrist, which maybe can swivel. Yes, definitely can swivel as well. And then you've got one more spot down here in the lower part of the foot, so that you can get some really nice poses, nice walking movements, and all sorts of different range of motion for the legs of the Smilodon. You do as well, of course, have the midsection articulation. You can see, again, pretty smooth range of motion right there. I don't know, yeah, I was going to say, I don't remember if we have a lot left and right. You do have a little bit, so that helps, again, to give you even more range of motion for your Smilodon. And then you also, of course, have the hip region, which you can see is very smooth right now. Also can move out away from the body, giving you more movement. And then you have the knee, which works pretty nicely. The ankle here again can swivel and also go forward and back. And then you also have this spot in the foot, to go up and down. So again, really nice articulation overall, and this one is actually fairly smooth straight out of the box, which is nice because a lot of the time the Beasts of the Mesozoic figures can be very stiff out of the box. And then you also have the tail, which can swivel, and I think, yes, definitely can go up and down as well. So really, really impressive articulation all around, of course. And then you have the alternate head, which you can see, of course, features the same paintwork, same coloration and everything as the other one. Just shows off a much more ferocious visual for the Smilodon, which we can very clearly see. Again, it looks like it's coming in for an attack, for a kill, and it gives you a way better chance to really look at and examine the inside of the mouth of the figure, showing the tongue and all the very nice paintwork and washes and everything that have been used in here, as well as, again, the very nice paintwork with the brownish tone kind of leading down from the gums down into the saber teeth, and also the really nice gloss coat that we have going on in there. Another area that's interesting is you can actually remove the ears, which you can see right there. I don't know if you can basically take these ears off and put the other ears on. Maybe you could. Yeah, so yeah, you definitely can. I can see it already wiggling. You just have to pull that off. So you can switch the ears off from one head to the other if you want to have a different look for the ears. And obviously the ears look quite a bit different on the more roaring head compared to this one. So even more ability to make your Smilodon look exactly as you want it. So I think that's really about all we need to do for this one. I don't feel like there's anything else that needs to be done because we've already reviewed the sculpt in the previous review. We've already gone over size comparisons, all of that stuff in the original Smilodon review. And all we really needed to do with this one was, of course, take a look at the biggest difference and really the only difference, and that would be the coloration. And honestly, I think the colors on this one are really nice, really well done, and look great overall. I like that they've added a little variation of color, even more than I realized. Like, I kind of didn't pay a whole lot of attention to this one leading up to its release, not nearly as much as I do for the dinosaurs, and I don't really know why. I was almost dismissing this one in my head, even though I was excited for a Smilodon. It's just like we've got so many Smilodon out, so I wasn't as excited about this as I was for other figures. Now I feel like kind of a fool for that mindset, because having it here in hand, just like with the black darker version, it is absolutely gorgeous, and the coloration is a little bit cooler looking, honestly, than I would say I was expecting. Like with the patterning moving out into the back, the rear end of the body of the Smilodon does add a nice little bit of flashiness, and as a whole I feel like the coloration looks really good on the figure, really natural, definitely the type of color scheme I could imagine seeing on a Smilodon. And on top of that, the colors are added really realistically and nicely for the most part, almost entirely using washes and dry brushing and stuff, and just adding in variation of color that looks really good. The only area that again looks good but not as highly detailed as some of the others when it comes to the paint is the rear back area of the Smilodon. The patterning looks good, it just looks more like paint than body color, whereas the rest of the body looks very much so like body color. But that's just such a minor little nitpick, and overall I think the color scheme looks great, the colors themselves look great, like the tones I mean, and then of course the application of the paint is also really nicely done. And we of course have a super articulated Smilodon. It doesn't get much cooler than that. So if you are interested in grabbing one for yourself, this one I actually ordered from Lana Time Shop. Yeah, it's not too often I get Beasts of the Mesozoic from them, but to my surprise, they recently had stocked them on their website and had them actually prior to Creative Beast Studio getting them here in the United States. So I figured, what the heck, I would go place an order for the Smilodon, and it arrived, of course, quite quickly. And if you are interested, you can still grab this, along with actually all of the new Cyberzoic figures that they have to offer, I think excluding the dragon. I don't remember if the dragon was there, but I know the Allosaurus for sure was there, as well as the Achilobator, and then of course the Smilodon. So I will include a link in the description to where you can grab this from Lana Time Shop if you would like, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.